رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين ولعنة الله الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inshallah, we'll be, if Allah so allows and consents, we'll be finishing the series of lectures on Tuesday and not today. And with that, I would just like to thank you for those who may not be there on Tuesday, for being so patient, so magnanimous, so generous in your attitudes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. And if there's anything that's been said that has been hurtful, then please find it in your heart to forgive and to pray for this servant of yours and this very humble creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if there is something that you don't agree with, then it's your God-given right to disagree. And if there's something you can add to, then please add, and thereby leading this creature of God to a more accurate course. Now, continuing with what we have been saying, what has happened to the Muslim community at present is that it lacks that world view instilled within them by the Prophet of Allah. Now, I might be repeating myself for those people who've been hearing previous lectures. You see, our worldview is what determines what we become, how far we reach, to what heights we elevate, how much we actualize within ourselves. If, as we mentioned earlier on, our worldview is that the world is flat and there's an edge of the world and we might fall over, we will not dare to aspire to venture at a great distance from where we are, because the earth would end and we would fall off it. Similarly, we would not build a huge craft because of this limited world view. What happened was that when the Prophet came to his community, they lived in a very petty world, a very small world, and it did not befit the human to live in such a small world. Can you imagine a human being with the brain that Allah has given to him? How phenomenal this phenomena is of human being. Imagine, we are here stuck in the 21st century, yet through our minds we know and we speculate the beginning of a physical universe. We talk about it being infinite and at the same time expanding. We also know how it might possibly end. We come out with the laws of relativity, special relativity. We can place crafts on the face of Mars. We can send probes into deep space. We can see those galaxies that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks of in the Quran. He said, كَوَرْدَةٍ فِي الدِّهَانِ, or something like that in Surah Rahman. It's the heavens are opening up, and as if they are a rose dipped in oil. We are seeing it all. Can you imagine how phenomenal this human brain is? The Prophet found it in a very petty state, and surrounding those Arabs that nomadic community, on a very primitive community, were two massive empires, the Roman and the Persian. The Prophet went to them and he merely changed their world view. And two, he gave them a substantive notion of life. He connected their life with God. And he said, God is that impetus towards the fullness of growth. He said to them, cast your reins upon the mighty waves and conquer them. The Quran says, لا تنفضوها إلا بسلطان. You will not be able to go into the heavens save with great authority. So go into the heavens. If you can penetrate within the heavens, فانفضوها, then go and penetrate within the heavens. You will not do so save with authority. He filled them with that audacity. He gave them their human existence in a very substantive manner. He instilled within them the confidence that they ought to have had within them. He reminded them of their original state, that look, your Adamic state, where all the angels prostrated before you, you're not an ordinary individual. The universe is your oyster. It's for you to take. Doesn't the Quran say, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ? He has made it all subservient to you. It is all yours, take it. What he did was, he introduced God in a most meaningful way. That your flow towards growth is through God. God is condoning everything that you are becoming. And He is the impetus for growth. And He is propelling you towards growth within your natural condition. And then He opened up their minds. And He said, the world is yours. Look at the Muslims are the fathers of this scientific method that we have today, the empirical scientific method of data collection and inference. Islam in the Quran is constantly saying, examine creation, examine nature, and that prompted the Muslim minds to examine nature and bring about data and to infer general laws from specific facts. The Quran encouraged all of this. What is lacking today is that world view, and that world view is in line with the vertical axis. The vertical axis is one of self-realization, but the self-realization cannot come until and unless there is such an unrestricted world view. If our world view is skewed up, everything that we read, everything that we interpret is equally skewed up. Now I often give this example, that the Quran was a book that when it came to the nomads, the warring people, the warring factions, the people who rejoiced at the spilling of blood, burying their daughters, cheating and exploitation of others, it reformed them and made them into angel-like people, angelic people. Today, Zakir Naik reads the same Quran and condemns the majority of the Muslims, let alone humanity, to the pits of hell. The same Quran that gave life, that liberated people, that bonded them in fraternity and brotherhood, that gave Christians and Jews equal spiritual ranks and natural harmonious coexistence within the Muslim society, that same Quran being read by a Muslim today is condemning not only the majority of the world, but its own Muslim followers to the pits of hell. Why is that? The Quran is there for me to read and for me to receive whatever I want to receive from it. If you give the Quran to a 9-year-old, they will understand one thing. To a 20-year-old, they will understand another thing. To a 40-year-old, they will understand another thing. Yes? It's supposed to be like that. So it is the reader who will receive from the Quran. So the reader is the primary one. Me and you are the primary subjects. The greater we are, the greater the Quran will yield for us. The narrower we are, the narrower the Quran will become for us. We don't read the Quran, we read into the Quran and we impose upon the Quran. It's our condition that dictates what the Quran will tell us. At the absence of that worldview, everything becomes skewed up. Now you might be thinking, where is he going with this prelude? And it's beginning to sound quite nice, isn't it? Salawat. You see, Maulana in words are intoxicating for Maulanas, yes? The first Imam has said, he said, words are like medicine. Use them properly. If you give them in minute dosage, they cure. If you give them excessively, they kill. But I have an hour to kill, so bear with me. Now, the Prophet gave them that worldview. He gave them confidence. Within no time whatsoever, these nomadic, animal-like people prevailed over history. And the two massive empires became dwarfed in front of them. Today, that worldview is lacking within the Muslim community. What that means is that that vertical axis, which is that natural motion of existence towards self-realization, is no longer there, and hence this huge tension. We all know intuitively something has gone wrong. We all know intuitively something has gone wrong. Which one of us doesn't understand that something has gone wrong? But we shun that doubt, don't we? Don't we think at night when we are sleeping, is this it? Is there no more to life than this? Surely there should be a deeper purpose in life that awaits us. Don't we think this? Is God so petty that we will pray, He will reward us? If we will do sin, He will punish us? Is that all there is to it? Be all and end all? Nothing else. We forget that we are the primary subject of God's creation. Nobody else. We were having a discussion earlier on, and we stated in the whole meaning of Shafa'ah that Quran, the prophets, the angels, the imams, they are of no good to me until and unless I allow them to evolve within me. The real Quran is not the book. The real Quran is what takes birth inside here. Believe me, if that Quran is not inside here, it does nothing for me. Bury 10,000 Qurans with me. See if they help me inside my grave or inside my qiyamah. If it has not grown inside me and through me, and if I don't become the talking Quran and the living Quran, that Quran is good as nothing. It has been a story about me. It has been a story about the community. And until and unless we understand that the stakeholding of life is in our hands and something phenomenal is at stake, nothing will happen. So we all know intuitively something is wrong. It is no good talking about the Prophet or of the first Imam if I don't embody the Prophet or the first Imam. In fact, on that note, I'll give a little story of the Sufis. The Sufis have this tale that a picture was given to a few groups to draw upon their slates. Now, back in the day, the slates were not the way we have today. So the slates were of metal, and they could be rough and rusty and dented. So out of the 5 groups, the 4 groups started replicating the painting. The 5th group saw that their slate was uneven, rusty. So they began to polish it, clean it, and even it out. When the examination period finished, the examiner came and they assessed each painting and they accorded marks in accordance with their attempts. They came to the 5th group. They said, "Where is your painting?" They brought a clean, reflective slate. They said, "Well, where is the painting?" They said, "But the slate wasn't clean. It was rough. It was rusty." So we began to polish it and clean it. They said, "But then, where is the painting? At least the others attempted. You haven't done anything." They said, "Bring the original." When the original was brought, they said, "Place it in front of our reflective slates." And lo and behold, the original, in its original glory, was reflected within that reflective slate. And they said, "Why copy when you can have the original?" That is what we mean, that here are slates. The original truth awaits reception. What is lacking is that the one that is going to receive is unable to liberate themselves from their own limitations. What is missing within the Muslim community now is that lofty sense of goal and existence and confidence in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, I'll point this out as we go on. We have a hadith prior to the coming of Mahdi salamullah alayhi. And I remember I was very young, in my teens, when I used to hear this hadith in the month of Ramadan, back in the late 70s, that the Maulana would say, one of the signs of the coming of Al-Mahdi is that people will see themselves or see each other in the palms of their hands. And I used to think, wow, it will be a miracle that the Mahdi will bring. Little did I know that the hadith was talking about the state of technology. And then, of course, mobile communication came into existence, and now we see each other in the palm of our hands, don't we? Now, if the mind of the community was proper, they would have seen this hadith and they would have thought to themselves that something like this is achievable. All we need to do is to strive and discover how it is possible. It's a physical, it's not a logical impossibility. It's a futuristic physical possibility. Imagine the edge the community would have had on the rest of the world. Who has such hadiths available? When did the Japanese come across mobile communication? Who was it? Well, whoever they were the real followers of Al-Mahdi. Because whenever they invented that, the era of Mahdi grew closer. Imagine if we had understood with the right worldview, a right vision of progression, completion of potential, exploration of the infinite possibilities of nature, we would have discovered mobile communication 200 years before anybody else, and we would have assisted the growth process of the whole world and the process of our own actualization. Imagine the hadiths of the first Imam, the sixth Imam, about the stars, about the galaxies, about the formation, about travel in space. Imagine if our minds were right, if we had that befitting worldview, where we would have been by now. The lack of worldview. That is something that is missing within us. Now, we stated that ahkam, which is the regulatory system, was only placed there to assist with this process of self-realization, of self-actualization. The ahkam were only meant to promote growth. Their essence was in their growth promotion, nothing else. The ahkam were never meant to stifle us. They were meant to prompt growth. Now today, if we have the ahkam that says that if you can't pray in a certain region because there's no sunrise, sunset, you can't migrate to that region, then where will this Muslim take to space? Will such a Muslim ever go to space? We'll say, well, I can't do wudu. We'll say, well, the earth is going to get blown up. It's finishing its natural life. You need to explore other planets to live there. On the one hand, there's a natural surge in there to break all limits. On the other hand, the ahkam are stifling us, the regulatory system. The regulative system is stifling our growth. The regulative system, the ahkam, was meant to promote growth and to prompt growth in essence, not to stifle growth. 3, the thing that we understand is the whole notion Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives of taklif inside the Quran. Taklif means vesting with responsibility. What does it mean to be vested with responsibility? It means in accordance with our capacity, we bear responsibility in the existential framework so that it prompts the whole process of self-realization from weakness into strength. Yes? We have different types of responsibilities at different types of existences, don't we? When we are young, there's one sense of responsibility. When we are older, there's another sense of responsibility. When we are individual, there's one sense of responsibility. When we are community, there's a different sense of responsibility. When we are in a pluralistic world, there's a different sense of responsibility. These takalif were placed there as obligations based on capacities. They are what we call gradational. So it is quite possible that a young child, when she menstruates, she might have the taklif of fasting, but in no way is she mature enough mentally to have the taklif of conducting her life affairs. Or in no way is she capable of upholding the duties of a married life. The takalif are different. There's mental maturity, there's physical maturity, so on and so forth. If they were lumped together in the time of the Prophet, then there is a historical context for that. Back in the day when our ancestors went to Africa, they were very young. 9, 10, 11, 12. Our great-grandmothers, married at the age of 10 and had babies at the age of 11. This is something that will not happen today. But if you go to the jungles of Africa, it might happen. It's a relativistic world. What I'm trying to say is taklif is based on capacities. Rights are based on capacities. Now I'm going to get somewhere with this particular talk. You might be thinking, where is he going with it today? Has he lost the plot? Well, Maulanas have never got the plot in the first place. Salawat. So now, taklif is responsibility. We grow and mature through responsibility. The dynamics of this world, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created me and you, is that we learn through experience. We make mistakes and we learn through those mistakes, don't we? This is the process of life. A child falls, stands, falls, stands, falls, and masters how to walk, and then runs, and then we take flight. But it's a process based on trial and failure. Experience brings out the best in us. God has never, ever expected us to be absolutely accurate. I don't even believe in that notion of accuracy because I believe in the evolutionary flux, which we won't be able to explain right now or at any time soon. But in this world of God, there is no such thing as absolute accuracy. Even our jurisprudential system is based on the principle of fallibility. And I believe in the principle of evolutionary flux, that we are always evolving, and the goalpost of right and accurate is always moving as we are evolving in our evolutionary trend. But the main thing was that the Prophet empowered us. He said, try, make mistakes, learn through your mistakes, bear responsibility, grow, actualize yourself, become responsible for what you are doing, and have confidence. The first thing he denied was shifting responsibility from ourselves onto anybody else. That was the first thing he took out of the equation. He said there's no such thing as you shifting responsibility to somebody else. The Quran says on the day of Qiyamah, I'm repeating myself from the first lecture, that people will say, we found our chiefs doing this. Allah will say, well, what if they were wrong? We found our forefathers doing this. Allah will say, well, what if they were wrong? They did not understand it accurately. Then what? What does your reason tell you? What does your intuition tell you? Does it make common sense that if somebody didn't understand, because they have done it, you carry on doing it? Think about these things very, very carefully. I always say that the occultation of the 12th Imam is the biggest blessing. Really? Because there was a father holding the child's finger. It was about time that the father let go and let the child fall and learn how to walk properly, for that was the real purpose of existence. Which instructor would want their student to continuously ask them questions and not learn to think independently? Which father would want to always direct his child in business and not want him to come of age and to lead the business empire independently and to move it forward? The greatest joy for an instructor is when his student challenges him and goes a notch ahead, a step ahead of the teacher. The greatest joy for a father is to see his son come of age and to say to the father, I'll take over from this point and I will take this business to the heights that you could never have dreamt of. That is the success story. The success story for God is humanity's evolution and progression. But that can only happen if they have the confidence to bear responsibility for their lives. Now, this prelude was set for something that needs to be clarified in the mellowest of ways. I'm going on to the issue of taqleed, imitation. Taqleed cannot be proven from the sources. Not at all. None of the sources will prove taqleed. Not Quran, not Sunnah. The Quran and Sunnah will only support taqleed as a rational principle. Taqleed is a rational principle. What does that mean? That the person who does not know within their human condition has to make reference to the one who does know. That's a rational principle. How? I don't know anything about the sound system here. Somebody does know. I'll have to refer to them. I don't know anything about medicine. I have an ailment. I will have to refer to somebody who knows about medicine. Taqleed is this in principle, nothing more, nothing less. Now, everything that has been added to it is something that is historical, in a historical context. There is no divinity or sacredness to it. That it has to be a man, it has to be living, he has to be one, you can't switch. All of these things are not there within the Quran or the Sunnah. These were social, historical needs, and these restrictions have come upon the whole issue of taqleed. Uncritical following of the opinion of an expert without seeking justification, as Allama Hilli and a host of others have stated. Now, if you look at this point of making reference, it is based on an existential principle, the principle of incompetency. I am incompetent in an area, I will then seek the view of somebody who is competent in that area. Now, if you look at it in that way, and that is the rational basis of it, then that prevails upon the sum total of our life's existence. The whole process of life was to go from incompetency to a state of competency. And whenever we acquire competency, there will be that sophistication that the human community acquires, that it will again multiply the state of incompetency. So it's an ongoing process. Can you see that? There will never be a time where we do not need to refer to others or to each other. Yes? So the more competency we acquire, the greater will be other areas of incompetency. So now, when we acquire competency in a lot of areas, we will become incompetent in astrophysics, let's say, in genetic sciences, for example, in neurosurgery, in quantum physics. So there is that incompetency that we need to then refer to the experts of that field to understand what is happening there and how we need to modify ourselves in order to be productive. Now, on that note of competency and incompetency, the community has to take the stakeholding of the collective life. They have to make their own decisions themselves to the best of their understanding, and then go forward with it, and in hindsight revise themselves and make better decisions. There is no question of shifting the responsibility of making decisions on the shoulders of another. I have a social capacity in which I am one of many. That incompetency requires for me to become competent in my social capacity or communal capacity. I have a domestic capacity. I really do need to make decisions within my domestic capacity. I have an individual capacity. I'm incompetent. I have to acquire a state of competency because that's the natural flow. Now, this process of having taklif, responsibility at every level of existence, is a process which is a human existential process in every society. There are pressing moral issues for which we need to make decisions. We can't refer to anybody else because we have been given the insight into our own community, which is better than anybody else's insight. Today in the West, definitely we can say this, that if there is money in the name of khums, invest it to produce more money, to see to the needs of the poor people. Who in their right mind would not come to this judgment within this world or this part of the world, that you cannot just give money out endlessly, but if you can make money, produce more money, and make the whole community self-sufficient, then why should you not do that? That's a better option. That is the level of competency that is acquired, that is required by God, that the people come to that level of competency. So bankers, people in business, commerce, they should be putting their minds together and taking these decisions. When it comes to doing 3 Eids in one household, the community is vested with responsibility of taklif. They know that the community has to be one and united. The Muslims of the area have to be one. How can they shift that responsibility on the shoulders of another when they intuitively know that it is their duty? And they have to take bold decisions in that area, because intuitively what is being told to them and what is their existential state are conflicting, and they can't shift the blame on anybody else. So now here comes the problem. The definition of taqleed, the function of taqleed. We are told by Kadhim Tabatabai Yazdi that in order to execute duty accurately, you have to be one of three. Either a competent jurisprudent or legist, or act in accordance with caution, or be a muqallid. Fine. If you're a muqallid, then without taqleed, none of your actions are valid. Neither the ibadat of wajibat and muharramat, mustahabat, makruhat and mubahat, nor in contract. This is his statement in Al-Urwa Al-Wuthqa. Now here is something that I want to ask, genuinely ask, yes? If we talk about the broader framework that we've been expressing throughout, the broader framework of the vertical axis and self-realization into a state of godliness, individual and collective. If we look at that framework, what is the meaning of accuracy? Now I'll explain Tabatabai's, it's a brilliant argument that he brings. I'll bring in Tabatabai's reasoning. Why? Why isn't anything valid without taqleed? His reasoning is that when you do ibadat particularly, you make the intention of qurbatan ilallah, don't we? We say, I do this in order to seek proximity to God. Now, he analyzes this. Before you can make a bold statement that I perform this act in order to attain closeness to God, you have to have the knowledge base to know that this thing is required by God and it is taking you to God. And if you don't have the knowledge base, then you can't make that intention in the first place. So in order for that intention to be accurate, either you have to know it or follow somebody else who does know it. That is his argument. Yes? Now let us go through this little by little. You see, contracts, buying and selling. If I go to the shop and if I were to buy a bottle of milk, what would be the accuracy of that contract? Would it not be the exchange of ownership? The exchange of ownership will mark the accuracy of that contract, wouldn't it? Not the taqleed that I do of somebody or I don't do of somebody. The exchange of ownership in itself is the accuracy of that contract. So, the efficacy of a method is proven by the effect of the outcome of that method. So in this place, there is a price tag that this bottle of milk is 99 cents. Because in UK we never have a full pound, yes? It's always 99 pence. Because then the mind always thinks it's less than a pound. Yeah? And then there's a charity tin in which you put the 1 pence. So anyway, 99 cents. So we see 99 cents, we take out a dollar bill, we take the bottle of milk. That transaction does not require any taqleed. It is a valid transaction through the effect of shifting of ownership. Now when it comes to ibadat, how can we make an assertion that my salah is not valid? We stipulated the yardstick of validity of action in accordance with the vertical axis, didn't we? We stated that religion is an expression of God-human relation, where God marks the utmost point of aspiration of growth, and God marks the intimate process of growth. And the end game is that the human being becomes more God-like and spiritual morality. That was the whole purpose. And the ahkams were geared for the attainment of this end game, or the purpose of attainment of that godliness. So the ahkam were form, attainment of the godliness was essence. So in that scenario, what would be the accuracy of salah? The accuracy of salah would be in the outcome of the act, not in any intention that we make of doing somebody's taqleed before we pray. So the first Imam was asked, how do I know that my salah has been accepted? He recited the verse of the Quran, Inna salah tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Allah says that the prayer removes you from that which is unchaste and that which is reprehensible. So if after salah you find that you've become a better person, a more spiritually moral person, then your salah has been accepted. You have drawn closer to God through that prayer. So I will say, despite doing taqleed, if a person prays 100 rakat and does not become a better, more human and a spiritual individual, that salah has not been accepted. And if a person does not do taqleed and prays and spiritually becomes elevated and more of a moral person, then that salah has been accepted. So where will we praise the centrality of taqleed in the validity of any of the actions that God commands in form of ahkam? Taklif is all about bearing responsibility and growing through them. This notion of taqleed has been introduced in a way that it is not supposed to be introduced. It has served a beautiful function historically, no doubt. No doubt. And it will serve a function today as much as it served historically, but it needs to be revised slightly. The whole model needs to be revised slightly. And that is what we are going to talk about in terms of this taklif in the evolutionary scale. Gradational taklif and going from weakness into strength. So this notion of taqleed, that the action is not valid without making an intention of following somebody or uncritically taking the law from somebody. This is defeatist at this particular moment. How? Because the community feels by doing 3 Eids, they are pleasing God because the responsibility on somebody else's shoulder. But my brothers, we are not growing. And we not growing is us accounting ourselves immediately and punishing ourselves. Who will remove that punishment of incompetency? It's like a student saying, my teacher did not ask me to read, so I will not read. I will say, dear child, but in the examination room, who will fail, you or the teacher? Even if you were to blame the teacher, that because of the teacher you failed, it still leaves the fact that you are still incompetent. You haven't acquired the competency. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? By me saying that I relieve myself of responsibility by placing it on somebody else's shoulder, who is saying something to the accuracy of their understanding, but I know on ground it is inaccurate. But I follow it and say, well, he said it, so it's finished. I have no more responsibility. But the fact is that the community has not grown. If the community has remained incompetent, who will take the blame for that incompetency? Because the blame is immediate damnation. How can the child go and claim that, no, I want to fly the plane. I only failed because my instructor did not force me to study. The fact is you can't fly a plane. And you won't be able to fly a plane because you haven't acquired the competency of it. Does that make sense? So, we are saying here is that taqleed is valid, very valid. It's a rational principle and can never depart from human existence. But it has to be remodeled and refashioned. If I've learned how to pray from my parents, tell me, which person in the history of our jurisprudential or legist history has said, pray namaz without ruku and sujood? Or pray without hamd and qul huwallah? Or any other surah? Who has said it? Does anybody need to do taqleed about that? We know the method of it. Then why? Who doesn't know going around the Kaaba is 7 times? Or then we have Arafah and Mina and whatever else we have. I'm just saying that this notion that the accuracy of devotion is only assured by placing the collar of responsibility into somebody else's neck. Because that's what taqleed means, qalada, to place the collar of responsibility on somebody else's neck. How can that assertion that it's only accurate if you do taqleed, otherwise it's not accurate? The people who killed Hussain ibn Ali salamullah alayhi all prayed salah. There were people in there who had seen the Prophet. There were people who had rendered the Quran to their heart. There were people who had seen the Prophet carry Hussain on the back of his shoulder, and they signed the death warrant of Hussain ibn Ali. How accurate were their prayers? Zakir Naik's Quran, how accurate is it that the person can't see the beautiful charm of the Quran and condemns people to the pits of hell? Just because I am performing a formalistic method doesn't mean it's accurate. Accuracy is in self-realization. Accuracy is in taking responsibility, moving from a state of incompetency to a state of competency, and then aiming at another state of competency, and then another one in the evolutionary trend. Now, capital punishments, contracts, family law, look at any side of ahkam. You will find that they are all forms that have come to accommodate essence, and people themselves will understand the meaning of this essence as they begin to evolve. Now, a lot of these laws are not making sense because they are not in sync with human condition. Like, for example, the law of music. Shahidul Awwal and Thani gave 5 criteria to determine the halal music from haram music, yes? Sayyid Gulpegani said it's all haram. Sayyid Khouy said, well, if it is not befitting the personality of a Muslim, and if it's not conducive to vain gathering, then it is halal. Otherwise, it is haram. So we have all these different views. Now, the obvious thing is that there is no text particularly relating to music in a decisive sense within the Sharia. There isn't. Not in the Quran, not in the Hadith. The Prophet's family has merely alluded to music as being extension of certain verses of the Quran. Lahul Hadith, La'ab, and all these things that have come in the Quran. The Imams have said music is an extension of all of it. But we know now through our human condition, through the learning, psychological studies, yes, that music, certain form of it, is something that is not compatible and conducive to human growth. We know certain songs and lyrics are immoral, socially unproductive, detrimental. We know they're belittling God. We know that that is an area which does not need to be told to us that that is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. We know this, right? But at the same time, we know that a lot of it is not bad or evil or damaging. Some of it is very, very good. Allama Hilli practiced music therapy. Farabi was a musician. Look at these grand people who have contributed to music. They used music as therapy. I'm not sure about Allama Hilli, but Farabi definitely was a musician. I think Allama Hilli was also. Farabi was definitely a musician. He actually created instruments of music. There is many level of music that is halal. If we were to bring our own minds together, yes, then we will know that there is an absolute limit of haram. Below it is a discretionary limit, and put the onus of responsibility back on the individuals. Put it back on them. Give them the sense of real life, ownership of life, making discretions, having confidence, and leading their own lives and bearing full responsibility for it. Can I hear this? Should I hear this? Make a decision yourself. If it is against moral ethos, then of course don't hear it. If it is that sort of wasteful music and loud, don't hear it. But if it is morally tuned, then go and hear it. What difference does this make? I'll tell you. I will try to explain myself. You know, when you say to a young person, music is haram, what happens? They will still hear it. And then they will feel guilty about it. And then they will curse themselves and condemn themselves. And whatever confidence they had with their God, they will lose it. It's actually damaging. This sort of rigidity of laws. This is halal, this is haram, this is halal, this is haram. My goodness, what is this? The human existence is an existence which is colorful. An existence in which the human being has discretion. The ownership of responsibilities upon the human being. Decide for yourself. If it is preventing you from the remembrance of God, it's become haram for you. Don't partake. Yes? Don't. It's preventing you from prayer. In that case, the game of soccer is haram. If it is belittling God, yes? Everything must have that discretionary area and those absolute areas. And the madrasa students should be taught from the level of madrasa to take responsibility, and that they have to be good, righteous, moral, human, spiritual beings, and then teach them how to take decisions and ownership of life. And within 30 years, this community that has been blessed with the example of the Prophet and his family and the teachings of the Prophet's family, you will see them lead the world to its greatest heights. But when you take away their confidence, this is what becomes. This community anticipates an imam who will unsheath his sword and kill everybody. If this is what it has to expect from the future, then of course it's going to be steeped in regression.
But if it anticipates an Imam who is a glorious culmination of human growth, then this community will be prompted into action. They will lead the world in science, in technology, in writing, in morality, in philosophy, in every area. In astrophysics, in cosmology, in mathematics. But the community doesn't even have the audacity to take a stand on doing one Eid or to pray with the Sunnis. Imagine. It was never meant to be this way. Now, I'm just going to point at this now, and I said we'll conclude on Tuesday. So please all try and attend. And now I'm being very optimistic. Salawat. As I said, taqleed is a rational principle and it's a human condition, and humanity will never lose this need. What is the human principle? Level of incompetency reaching out to a state of competency. This level of incompetency reaching out to a state of competency will always have a need to experts. Now, I'll give this example as to how ijtihad ought to look. I was in Tehran, Shahid Beheshti University, giving my paper on euthanasia. The end of my paper suggested, yes, there's a panel of doctors, philosophers, mujtahideen, ayatullahs, muhakkik damad was there as well, amongst others. So my conclusion was that so long as there's potential for rationality, you can't let the person die, regardless of their age or state. Yes? So we can't even practice active euthanasia in the sense that you can't remove the life support systems. And we can't allow passive euthanasia. So if a person is dying, then apply the extraordinary life support systems. That was my view, yes, according to my own philosophical framework. I went back to Birmingham. There was a child of ours in ICU. A little child, 18. She was on full life support systems. So they called me in. They said, look, the doctors are saying we need to withdraw support now. And the mother was there beside herself, you know. She said, but God can do whatever He wants. If we keep it on, He might give her life. I spoke with the doctor. The doctor said, look, the amount of dosage we are giving to her, if we were to give you a percentage of it, it would kill you. He said to me, he said, look, the next thing, what do you want me to do? To physically insert my hand inside her chest and pump her heart? How far do we go? He said, she's suffering. I said, well, you don't know if she's suffering, right? So take that suffering business out of the equation, because I obviously was stuck in my own jurisprudential thinking. He said, look, do you want me to go to the court of law and get an injunction? I said, no, give me some time. He said, I'll give you some time. Go and think about it quickly, because this is unjust for this child. So now it's a double-edged sword. What is a double-edged sword? If euthanasia is haram, and we conduct it, the mother will never forgive herself, because she will always be thinking that if only we had extended her life for a day, God might have intervened. Yes? On the other hand, if euthanasia is allowed under such circumstances, then she will live with the guilt that why did we prolong her suffering for so long? It's very different when a mother sees their child suffering, right? Their compassion prevails and says, let them go now. I can't stand them suffering, yes? So it's a double-edged sword. And this double-edged sword is created by me, giving her my fatwa. Can you see that? Or people like, that's what I meant, generic me, yes? Giving the fatwa. So I said, give me some time. The child died within that time, and that was the greatest mercy. It was the greatest mercy of God that the child died, because I could not have come to a decision. Then I revised my whole system of thought. In cases like euthanasia, for example, just taking an example, medical case, you need the input of people who are experts at medicine, at care, aftercare, philosophers who understand the meaning of suffering, because that features prominently in my own philosophy. What is the meaning of suffering? You need a mujtahid who makes pedantic, who conducts pedantic reading of the text and brings their views out. We need philosophers operating in a greater framework. This is the process of integrating the richness of human learning. And that would be then the instruction to go forward. And the way it will look is, that this is the absolute area of no or yes, rest of it is in your discretion. You have to make that choice and take the ownership in accordance with your own particular situation. There aren't any laws that govern every situation. That is how the model should look. Similarly, in banking and finance and monetary issues, we need bankers, commerce-minded people. We need economists to come together with somebody who reads the texts, together with philosophers who come together and say, look, this is the absolute area of yes and no. The rest of it is discretionary, so that the community may flow in competency, from incompetency into competency. Now, I know this might have appeared a bit strange and my time has finished, but please make referrals to the Quran and the early history and the history of the Imams. You will never find this notion there. People used to go to the Imams and they used to say, who can we refer to? And the Imams used to point them in the direction of several Sahaba, any one of them, they would say, yes? Hui discusses brilliantly the beginning of ijtihad and the form of taqlid from the verse of the Quran. It's a brilliant deliberation, but that is in its embryonic stage. As the human community evolves, acquires greater sophistication, everything evolves and everything becomes more and more sophisticated. I'm just going to point at one last thing right now. That when a fatwa conflicts with something which is intuitively correct or incorrect, then intuition will prevail. So in the 70s, when we had these fatwas that we can steal from the British community, they were intuitively incorrect. For anybody to follow that fatwa was committing a crime against God. Because intuition says I can't steal from anybody else, no matter what the fatwa says, yes? If anybody wants to follow a fatwa of 3 Eids, intuitively it's inaccurate. The community would have to decide that no, we have to do whatever parameters we set. It is the night of Ashura, and we advance into the narration of Hussein ibn Ali. On this night, we are told, Imam Hussein asks Abbas and says to Abbas, seek permission from these people to give us respite for a night, for you know how dear it is to Hussein's heart to worship Allah and to devote myself to God, and I do not have beyond this night. The narration states that when the army of Ibn Sa'd heard the way in which Hussein was devoting himself to Allah, so many of them defected the army of Yazid. Many fled the wilderness of Karbala, and some came and joined forces with Hussein ibn Ali. And that devotion and the sound, the humming of devotion could have been what finally turned Hur from his position. The night is progressing. Zainab's heart is filled with anguish. From Zain al-Abidin we have this narration that Zainab stood at the door of the tent. Hussein awoke abruptly from his nap and he said, O time, woe be unto you as a friend. For how many have awoken in your bosom as friends, only for you to conceal them beneath the earth by nightfall. When Zainab heard this, she began to cry and slap her face. She said, O brother, you are pronouncing your own death. He said, O sister, bear it with patience. Whatever is to prevail shall come to pass. The night is progressing. Zainab's heart is filled with anguish, with pain and with fear, almost begging God, O Allah, do not let the sun rise this day. Let the dawn never see this earth, so that my brother never has to face the fate awaiting him. There comes a point when Zainab's heart can no longer withstand the anguish. She wishes to see her brother. She advances to the tent of Hussein. When she sees the tent unguarded, she is filled with rage. How dare Abbas and Habib leave my brother unguarded on such a sensitive night? She lifts the cloth of the tent and she sees Hussein in quiet devotion. Hussein is praying to Allah in a secret conversation. In rage, she turns from Hussein's tent. Indeed, I will admonish Abbas about this. As she approaches the tent of Abbas, she hears sound emanating from the tent of Abbas. She lifts the cloth of the tent of Abbas. What does she see? That Abbas is kneeling in the center of the tent, polishing his blade. And the sons of Hashim are revolving around Abbas. Abbas calls out, "O sons of Hashim, what do you intend tomorrow when the battle breaks out?" Akbar, Qasim, they all cry out, "O Abbas, the discretion is yours, you are our master. You shall be the first to be killed tomorrow when the battle breaks out, lest anybody says that my brother valued his family beyond his friends." Zainab was filled with emotion. Tears began to roll from her eyes. She advanced, and she heard similar sounds coming from the tent of Habib. She lifted the cloth of Habib's tent. What did she see? Habib was in the middle of the tent, knelt on the ground, polishing his blade, and the Ansar were circling Habib. Habib cried out, "O man, why have you divorced your wives? Why have you abandoned your towns? Why have you come here on this night?" They said, "O Master, O Habib, the discretion is yours. Command, and you shall find us obedient." He said, "Tomorrow, when the battle breaks out, you shall be the first ones to give your lives. Lest anyone says that the companions of Hussein valued their lives beyond the family of Hussein." Zainab could not control her emotion, choking on the tears. She was retreating, and she finds Hussein approaching her. When she sees the face of Hussein, she breaks into a faint smile. Hussein says, "Oh sister, what brings joy to your lips on such a dreadful night?" She explains what she has seen. He says, "Oh Zainab, do you wish to see how loyal these people are to me? Indeed, O brother, then stand behind the tree. O Abbas, O sons of Hashim, hasten to me." Abbas in the front, sons of Hashim behind Abbas, hasten to Hussein ibn Ali. "O Habib, O Ansar, come to me." Habib comes running, and behind him are all the Ansar. They all gather. Hussein looks at them and says, "O people, why have you abandoned your towns, your cities, your family? Why have you come here on this night?" They said, "O Hussein, in order to save you." He said, "O people, by you dying, I shall not be spared. Know that none of you will be spared tomorrow. I take away the obligation of the pledge of allegiance from you. You may use the darkness of this night as a cover and flee and save your lives." No sooner had Hussein said this, they unsheathed their swords and placed it upon their necks. They say, "O Hussein, if you are in any doubt about our loyalties, command us and we will behead ourselves and place our heads at your feet." Hussein's eyes filled with tears. He said, "O Allah, bear witness that no prophet, no wali, no wasi, no saint has ever been granted with companions like the ones I have been granted with." He said, "Look on and look into the heavens." They all looked into the heavens and they see the paradise. They say, "O Hussein, let us receive it. If it is not audacious, we would like to preempt the war." Hussein said, "No, the time will approach." He turns to the people of Asad. He says, "O man, know well, after my death, my women shall be taken like captives of Rome from street to street. Take your women back to the clan of Asad in their safekeeping." Ali ibn Madahir, the brother of Habib ibn Madahir, comes to his tent. His wife asks, "O Ali, what did the Imam say?" "He has asked me to take you back to the clan of Asad, "Why, O Ali? Because I will be killed tomorrow, and he will be killed tomorrow." Then what will happen to his sister Zainab? She will be taken as a captive. She said, "Woe be unto you, O Ali, that the daughter of Fatima will be taken as captive, and you fear for the dignity of your own household? Go and give your life to Hussein, and let me be with my Zainab." The night prevails. In the depth of the night, Hussein ibn Ali walks within the plains of Karbala. Hilal bin Nafi reports, "I started walking behind him. And I hear this from the Dhakirin. Hussein turns back. He said, "Who may this be?" "I, Hilal." "Why?" "I fear the ambush of the enemy, and you may be unaware. Accompany me." "Oh Hussein, what is it that you do?" "I examine the battlefield for tomorrow. See its elevated place, and see its troves. See the trees from whence the enemies can ambush us." Hussein was examining the battlefield. He came to a place, and he said, in a painful, sorrowful state. He said, "O Master, what grips your heart with sorrow?" "It is here I see a dagger embedded in the chest of my Akbar." He walks on. He comes to a place and falls to his knees. "O Master, what will happen here?" Abbas's arms will be cut from his body. He walks on. He comes to a place and he cries out aloud, "What shall happen here, O Master?" "My Asghar's thirst will be quenched by an arrow." Suddenly Nafi says, "I heard the cries of a woman who cried with a broken heart as if she has lost her child. And as Hussein began to advance into a shallow place, I said, 'O Master, what is this place and who is this woman?' He said, 'This is the place where your master shall lose his life, and this is my mother who weeps for me.'" The day of Ashura comes to pass. The friends of Hussein are killed. The family of Hussein is killed. Hussein comes, makes way for his final battle. He looks inside the tent of Abbas and says, "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-ali al-azim." Yearning for his Abbas, but he finds him not. He looks ahead and he says, "O sons of Hashim, O friends of mine, what has become of you? I cry out to you to come to me, yet you respond not. By Allah, death has deprived them of speech. If Allah were to reinstill within their bodies the soul once again, they would come running to me." He ascends his steed and for one final time cries out, "Hal min nasir, yansuruna hal min mughisin yughithuna." Is there a helper who will come to our aid? Is there a protector who will fight on behalf of the progeny of the Prophet? As he cried out, the women's cries arose from the tent. He ran inside the tent. He said to the women, "Has a child lost his life?" They said, "No, O Hussein. Every time you cry out for help, your Asghar trembles. O Hussein, take him. Give him some water, a few drinks of water to rescue his life." "O Hussein," said his mother, "I can no longer sustain him. And I want your child to remain with me. You shall be gone. I will look upon him, and he will be your remembrance for me." Hussein takes Asghar. The narration is this: he covers Asghar under his abba, ascends his steed, and walks towards the enemy. We hear that the enemy feel that Hussein has brought the Quran to intercede for him. Indeed, he brings the Quran, but a Quran none like another. The speaking Quran. Hussein lifts his Abba and exposes his baby and raises him upon his hands. And he says, "O people, what crime has this child committed against you? Look at how he dies of thirst. Do you not see his lips dried? Do you not see how he turns? He does not anymore have any strength. O people, if you feel that I shall drink your water, then come and place a drop of water into his mouth yourself." As he says this, the people in the army of Yazid begin to turn their faces and begin to weep, fearing a rebellion. Umar ibn Sa'd looks at Hurmala. "Iqta' kalam al-Hussein." Sever the speech of Hussein, Hurmala. Cut him off. Hussein engages in a prayer with Allah. "O Lord, I bring to you a final offering. A child snatched from the lap of a mother who has no another. O Lord, accept him and let me be." Hurmala, cut him off. Hurmala fixes his arrow in the bow and his hand trembles. "Hurmala, why does your hand tremble so?" He said, "Ibn Sa'd, look ahead. May that be the mother of the child." A mother filled with anguish, looking on from the door of the tent. "Hurmala, do as I say." He fixes his arrow into the bow. It is an arrow that bears 3 points and 3 heads. Hussein stands under the sun, lifting his asghar. The arrow is released. Hussein is engaging with his Lord. The arrow pierces through the air. Hussein stands looking to the sky. Asghar turns upon Hussein's hands. His head hangs by the skin of its neck. It cut the child's neck from ear to the ear. As Asghar turns upon Hussein's hands, Hussein loses his senses and ability to reason. Hussein is unaware as to what has happened. As the warm blood oozes from the severed neck of Asghar and falls into the palm of Hussein, the warmth of Asghar's innocent blood brings Hussein back to reality. As he sees his child, he begins to tremble uncontrollably. He calls out, "O Lord, O grandfather, O Ali." As he trembles, I will say, "Hussein, if you are calling towards Ali, your father, the one who unhinged the door of Khaybar, call him not, for he cannot withstand the weight that you bear in your arms." Hussein looks towards the heavens. The heavens turn their face. He looks towards the earth. The earth trembles beneath his feet. He cups the blood and applies it upon his beard. And he says, O child, like this shall we be raised in front of your grandfather and my father." Hussein is trembling. He does not find the resolve to move. He cries out, "Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, ridan biqada'ihi wa tasliman li amri." He moves forward, then stops, then moves backwards, then moves forward, then moves backward. I will say, "O Hussein, have you not carried the severed arms of your Abbas? Have you not extracted a dagger from the chest of your Akbar? Have you not carried the torn body of your Qasim? Oh Hussein, this is but a baby. What weight does it have?" Hussein looks to me and says, "Oh man, you do not understand. There is a mother that awaits him. How may I return this trust of a mother to a mother in this state?" The heavens open and they call out, "Oh Hussein, Give him to me. I have a mother waiting for him. Go ahead, O Hussein. Hussein advances. As Hussein advances, Sakina runs. And behind Sakina is the mother of this child. As Sakina and Rubab approach Hussein, she says, "O master, hand me my child." As he lifts his cloak and she sees what she sees, she says, "O child, do children like you be slaughtered in a way camels are slaughtered?" ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. مات من حسين.